Very little do we see the Master Chief talk about his past, his feelings, and those who he has a strong connection with. Perhaps more so in recent times in light of the heartbreaking events with Cortana, his loss, grievance, and the weapon shining a light on his emotions made us see a side of the Chief that blamed himself, that felt guilt, and was struggling to come to the acceptance stage of his emotions. But there comes a moment in Halo Infinite where the Master Chief shows us someone of deep importance to him that we never really hear of in the games, and it comes at a moment where Chief takes great hesitation to take bold action, and you can almost hear the pain in his voice when he issues the commands to his operating system to activate the weapon's deletion routine. This is the story of the largest and the strongest Spartan 2 who would have a long-lasting impact on not only the Master Chief, but Blue Team and the entirety of the Spartan program. This is the heartbreaking tale of the weapons deletion routine, Samuel-034.
Ultimate Halo.
Hey up lads and lasses, Fletch here from Ultimate Halo, and if you're not already, please do consider subscribing. Only 34.4% of you who watch my videos have hit that button, so if you want to keep up with all if you want to keep up to date with all the Halo Infinite content that's coming, especially lore videos, hit that button so you're notified for when it happens. Also, my Twitch link is in the description down below. Honestly, if you want to just come out and talk some Halo lore on my streams, do that. I would absolutely love to talk story and everything else you want to discuss. And lastly, thank you so much to Microsoft and 343 for this awesome care package on screen. If you want to see me unbox it, I've got an Instagram story in the description too. So there is a stage in Halo Infinite where the Chief has a tough call to make. He can't let the weapon, who we will be referring to as Cortana at times in this video, to be compromised. We know what a Cortana model can do when things go wrong, and as a safe measure, she has a failsafe implemented where the Chief can input certain data to activate her deletion routine. This is where Chief shows a part of his past.
I can't fight it, please.
Red flag. 034.
What are you doing?
Samuel.
You said... I thought we were a team. I thought we were a team.
Samuel. The relationship between Chief and Samuel started off as a rocky one, as they got off on the wrong foot. Both conscripted into the Spartan program at the young age of 6, they were both taken and trained on the planet Reach, which would soon become a home for them. On their first day of training, Franklin Mendez, the head of the Spartan 2 training program, set to work putting these young soldiers to the test, placing Kelly 087, Samuel 034, and John 117 together as a team. John, as you would expect, excelled in almost every single way. He outperformed all other Spartans, but here was the issue. He outperformed his team to the extent where he left his teammates behind. A consequence for losing in training would result in you and your team not eating that night, and because John won, but his team lost, they all went hungry. The next day, Sam confronted John on this, shoved him and threatened him with violence if the same was to happen again. Thankfully for them all, they came third, resulting in a full stomach that night. And whilst Chief had always shown great character, this was always a turning point for him, and seeing how his peers reacted taught him that working together makes us succeed. Over time, the relationship between John and Sam grew stronger, and when sent out on a wilderness training exercise, they were tasked with making it to an extraction point, with the loser being made to walk back to their training facility. The Spartans gathered as a collective to form a plan. However, on their way, they encountered some UNSC Marines which were not in standard uniform. In a ploy to trick them, John suggested that Sam feigned injury whilst the other Spartans waited patiently to pounce, to throw rocks at the Marine and make them unconscious. Once the entirety of the squad was defeated, they stole their dropship and made their way back to the training reserve. When returning to explain his actions, John defended himself and the actions he took to bring all the trainee Spartans back home. Impressed with his courage, leadership and performance, Mendez promoted him to squad leader. Chief had always shown leadership qualities, but it was clear that he knew that he needed the support of those around him with the right skills and abilities to truly succeed, and that's why Sam was often his second in command. And in their time together, the two Spartans engaged in two critical missions. Their first was Operation Talon, with an objective of capturing Colonel Robert Watts, the leader of the United Rebel Front, defector of the UNSC. After successfully infiltrating a freighter whose cargo was going straight to Watts, they arrived at Eridanus Secundus, an inhabited asteroid, as an insurrectionist base. Blue Team, now including Fred, infiltrated his residential complex, climbed the elevator shaft to avoid his security, to then take out his armed guards and secure him as their captive. John did take a few shots, but other than that, Blue Team came out feeling pretty great after a successful mission. But what would ultimately happen next is not only what would change their careers, but it would start the next stage of humanity trying their best to survive a constant onslaught coming from their first encounter with the Covenant. After the destruction of Harvest, the Spartans on board the UNSC Commonwealth made their way to Kaiseti 4 to obtain their new Mjolnir armour. Whilst making their way there, they were intercepted by the Covenant ship Unrelenting. Whilst the UNSC ship did hold it off, the Spartans made their way to the surface to try their new armour to prepare for their first mission against the Covenant. They made their way into a breach on the ship's surface so they could detonate a nuke in the ship's reactor. On their way, Sam took a shot for John, where a fully charged plasma pistol shot breached his chest plate. As they progressed and reached the nuclear reactor, it became clear that Sam would have to stay behind, protect the nuke until Blue Team could escape, as the breach in his chest would kill him when exposed to the vacuum of space. This hit Blue Team hard, and it made them remember that they were not invincible. No matter how much armour, how much training, or how well augmented they were, there was still part of them that was human, and this could be strongly attributed as to why Chief will not let anyone behind, even to this date. John later said that Sam's life was not wasted, Kelly. His death brought us something very important. The Covenant can be killed, humanity can win this war. This renewed hope in Chief that things would get better, and a funeral was held for Samuel, and Chief's views spread far beyond Blue Team and spread to the wider Spartan program. As a result for Chief, all Spartans will have emergency patching kits, extra thrusters and locator beacons so the same would not happen again. Then lastly, to round off this deletion routine was the initialization code Red Flag, which was an operation to take down the Covenant in multiple phases, where a group of Spartan 2s would hijack a Covenant vessel, locate their homeworld High Charity and kidnap a prophet to force a truce in hopes to end the war. Despite this planning taking place, it was never executed due to the fall of Reach. Looking at this now, there is almost a striking resemblance between the two stories between Chief, Sam and the weapon. Chief wanted to do things on his own very early on, did anything to get the mission done, even at the cost of others, which we clearly saw during Chief's time in training. He soon let go of that mentality, but in his grief with losing Cortana, he did shut himself down and had to learn the same lesson again when letting the weapon back in. Perhaps Chief knew deep down that having Samuel-034 as the activation for the deletion routine might just remind him of that, because his hesitation to confirm the final step almost shows this, and thankfully, before it was too late, the weapon cancelled this, and Chief is now in a much better position because of it. But what did you think to this reference of Spartan-034 in Halo Infinite? It was really nice to hear Chief actually mention him directly, so let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and make sure you subscribe for more Halo Infinite lore content like this one, and I will see you next time on the one and the only Ultimate Halo.
Subscribe now to Ultimate Halo for more unfriggin' believable Halo content.